let's talk Clippers, Rob. Now, they had a big three. One of the most ballyhooed big threes or most decorated big threes in the league. James Harden, an MVP. Kawhi Leonard, a two-time champion. And Paul George, who looks like he's on his way to a Hall of Fame induction later, when he's done playing. And now it is no more. Paul George goes to the Philadelphia 76ers, Rob, because he was seeking the 4-year max deal from the Clippers. They were only willing to give him 3 years. Same deal they gave Kawhi Leonard, which was 3 years, $152 million. And Paul George got more from Philly. They gave him 4 years, about $212 million. And so he now joins fills out another big three in Philadelphia. We'll get to that later with Joel Embiid and Tyrese Maxey. So, Rob, what do you think of the decision that Paul George and the Clippers in this instance made?
Bravo to the Clippers. Bravo. I mean, I told you before, I just couldn't do it with Paul George. Once you made the commitment to Kawhi, you could only keep one of those guys. You just can't do it again.
Really?
Yep. And I just think the 3 years, they offered him the same thing that they gave Kawhi. There was an opportunity for him to sign it. He didn't want to be there. Obviously, he took more money, and I'm not mad at him. You want to go to Philadelphia and go there and try to win a championship there, that's fine. But if I'm the Clippers, you can't let everybody run your organization. You have perimeters, you have parameters, Chris, that you want to work inside of. They kept James Harden. What he got? 2 years, $70 million.
Yep.
And they'll add some other players around. That's a great deal. I mean, right? Like that's workable, right? That's workable. They're not on a hook for James Harden for like $200 million or something crazy. Right. That's workable. And you have a player of that ilk. So once they realize they could get Harden, you know what I mean, and not have to break the bank to keep him around, I think I don't have an issue with it. I know people will look, and I'm not trying to say Paul George isn't a good player, Chris. He's a really good player.
Right.
But there comes limits and expectations, and mostly they've been disappointing, and I'm not blaming him only. It's just been a lot with the organization. But I think they had a number, and if he wanted to stay there and be a part of it, he could. This is his hometown. They got the new arena. None of that mattered to him. He just wanted to get cashed out. And so Philly came with more money, and that's what free agency is all about. But I don't have a problem with I don't think Paul George being there, not being there is going to be the difference of them winning because.
Well, they're not winning without him.
Yeah, but
they weren't winning with him.
That's what I'm saying. They're
not going to win without him.
But that's my point, that they weren't going to win. So
yeah, I hear that. I mean,
they weren't.
Right. For them, at this moment in time, and I think this is why you do the James Harden deal, Rob, it's about staying relevant, right? They're going into a new arena.
Got $1 billion arena open. They got to sell tickets, but they don't have to. Right.
They want to make the playoffs. They got a shot. The West obviously is incredibly deep. I think there's really only two teams that are out of it, and that's Utah and Portland. Everybody else is going to be fighting for a playoff spot. And they'll be one of those teams. But I feel you on that. And I'll say this. I've said it once. I'll say it again, Rob. To me, the mistake was keeping Kawhi. He's the guy I would have let walk. Now, I think he's better overall. He's a better player than Paul George. But he's also more – they're both injury prone, but he's more so than Paul George. And – we've seen it, Rob. The last 2 years, he played in the regular season. They managed him. It was like, okay, here he is. He's ready. And then come playoff time, and he misses most of the postseason. They've played 11 playoff games the last 2 years. He's played 4 of them. And so that was the mistake. I thought when they signed him last season, and congrats to his representation. My goodness. They did a great job. But I thought from that point on, it was like, man, I mean, you locked up Kawhi. You kind of need to stay the course and be all in. And I I feel you. I think they'd be better with Paul George, but honestly, maybe only slightly better. And so you bring back Harden. You've got Kawhi. Derrick Jones Jr. is there, who we know played with Dallas, helped them get to the finals. They still have Ivica Zubac. So they have enough where there's, for Clippers fans, there's some hope that maybe they make it to the playoffs. But with George, and I agree with you, I don't think they would have won it. But with Paul George, Kawhi, and Harden, there was at least a chance, I guess, that if for goodness sake they stayed healthy, that they'd have a chance to get out of the West. And now that chance is gone. Like, so now, you're hoping for the playoffs, and you're not making a run. I don't care. This team right now is not making a run deep in those playoffs. But, they got a shot to make it. And Rob, there's talk also about Westbrook going to Denver, about them trading Westbrook to Denver, and Jokic wants him. So that would be interesting.
That would be. Wow. Okay.
I like him off the bench there. I can't imagine they're thinking of starting Westbrook, but I'd like him to bring his energy off the bench. For Paul George, Rob, look, Philly, I understand the move, Rob. They sitting there with $60 million and really no one to give it to. So they go get Paul George. I think I'm not picking Philly to win the East. I think the pressure is on Joel Embiid. I mean, Rob, he's had James Harden and Tyrese Maxey. Now he's got Tyrese Maxey and Paul George. Embiid needs to step up, but I just, right now, I think even in the East, Philly will have a shot if healthy. I don't think they'll be fully healthy. That doesn't mean Embiid might not play in the playoffs, but it'll just mean he'll be banged up and playing on one leg or whatever. But I still like Boston better than Philly, and I like the Knicks better than Philly because of their depth.
Wow.
Yeah. I like the Knicks getting Mikal Bridges. That happened last week while you were gone, and their depth is good. I know they hate losing Isaiah Hartenstein, but I think they'll be okay. But, on paper, I love Philly. But Paul George, kind of to your point, is injury prone. He missed the whole playoffs a couple years ago. And he's almost as injury prone as Kawhi is.
Yeah, it's a shame because he's a talented player. And if he could just stay healthy, Chris, but it doesn't seem to be always the case. And you can't count on him. And then he's had some duds as well. I don't know. It's just he's as you say, they need him to win, but they weren't going to win. So what's the difference?
Right.
I mean, that's really what it comes down to.
Yeah, and I think, like I said, I think they can still make the playoffs possibly without him. They might miss because they definitely are less talented than they were. But Rob, they were exasperating, and we're going to talk about them. And it's interesting because the same thing that failed the Brooklyn Nets, who you and I liked, failed the Clippers. And I don't blame the Clippers for going out and getting
Clippers
Kawhi
did everything
Leonard
that they
Paul
could do,
George.
Chris.
Right.
Are you kidding?
That was a great move.
They did a great thing. They put together a tremendous team. If that team could have just stayed healthy,
right?
Really, for a couple, if they had a healthy run for 3 years, they would have a championship. I don't even doubt it.
Maybe not, but they would have been right. They had a great shot. I mean, you never know if they're going to win it.
But I'm saying like a 3-year run.
Great.
You know what I mean? Like not a 1-year shot. But if they stayed healthy for 3 years, they would have had a shot at it. I think they would have won a championship. Really
the only year they had that legitimate chance was 2020 in the bubble.
And they lost.
And that was an odd situation because of the bubble. But still, they dropped. They were up 3-1 on Denver. Would have gotten the Lakers, in the conference finals, but they blew a 3-1 lead, which was terrible. And neither Kawhi or Paul George showed up in that game.
Right.
7. Shouldn't have even got to a game 7. But Kawhi was 6 for 22. George was 4 for 16.
That's awful.
In game 7. Yeah. And that was their chance. It turned out, you didn't know it at the time, but that really, Rob, was their last chance. to really, when they were both healthy for the bulk of the season and the playoffs. And it's really similar to Brooklyn, where you had a championship caliber roster, but injuries just.
The year that Milwaukee
didn't
won
give
the
them a real
championship,
chance.
Chris. I mean, that was that right there. Durant wins it if his foot's not on the line. The Bucks never win. I mean, it's unbelievable, and that was with the injuries.
I was gonna say, Rob, if Harden and Kawhi or Kyrie, remember they were back and forth,
hurt.
one's out, the other's out. If they were healthy,
they would have won a championship that year.
They would have beat Milwaukee.
There's no doubt.
I have no doubt.
They almost beat him without him.
Right. And Harden was on one leg, at that when that series ended. So I agree with you, and it's just, it's unfortunate. And I tell you what, with the NBA this year, Rob, this upcoming season, they really, I hope, and I'll probably start talking to somebody about it and see what they're thinking. But they need to really keep an eye on these injuries, Rob, and see if they have a similar injury problem this year and these playoffs as they had last year.
Right.
They're going to have to try to, they have to do something. And I'm not saying I have the answer, but you cannot have your playoffs determined. We've talked about it before, Rob. There always have been injuries. Sometimes the team in the finals is banged up. Right. It defined this season and particularly these playoffs. It really did. And you cannot have that happening for, extended years. So, the Clippers, look, they went for it. It didn't work. And it's interesting because now, Rob, they're kind of in that in-between space, right? They're not going to be horrible. They're not going to be great. They might be good enough to get in the playoffs, maybe, or they might be, bad enough just to miss the playoffs but not get a high lottery pick. So it's going to be interesting to see, but I just think they made the wrong decision. I would rather have George than Kawhi. Not like I said, I think Kawhi is a better player, but he's just more injury prone and less dependable. So
yeah, I both are. And Kawhi played all year, which was weird. And then there he goes, got hurt in the play.
Right. It's just like, you thought his body just doesn't seem to be able to withstand 80 plus games.